Hey there! Welcome to the Flute 360 podcast. I'm Dr. Heidi K. Begay, and I'm a flutist, educator, coach, and podcaster. My God-given mission is to serve you. I am passionate about guiding you, the modern-day flutist, to discover your unique voice on and off the stage. The goal of this podcast is to help you thrive, both as an artist and as a musicpreneur. Go ahead and grab some espresso, your favorite notepad, and let's get to it. Today's episode is titled Suzuki, Piccolo, and Auditions, Oh My, with Chris James.
Hey everyone, this is Corinne Smith here from the William S. Haynes Company. I'm excited to introduce to you an exciting new initiative that is available now to flute teachers. Introducing Club 88 for educators. We know that educators like you provide the inspiration and enthusiasm for the next generation of flutists. We literally couldn't do it without you. So we have made Club 88 for Educators an exclusively inclusive club for flute teachers all around the world. Club 88 for Educators offers a specially tailored selection of perks and benefits we can offer you for spreading your love for all things Haynes. These benefits include discount on Haynes merch, the opportunity to earn Haynes dollars to purchase goods, services, and events, a community forum where you can share ideas, tips, and tricks and stay connected with the Haynes family of educators, free shipping on studio samplers within the continental United States, priority scheduling for Haynes University classes, and invitations to exclusive Club 88 events at festivals and conventions around the world. We believe that teaching should be more rewarding, and with Club 88 for Educators from Haynes, it will be. To find out more information and to sign up to start earning your rewards today, visit our website at wmshaynes.com/Club 88.
Hi, Chris.
Hi.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine. How are you?
Good. I love those paintings behind you.
Thank you.
Not quite sure if you just saw my recent email, but I was like, Facebook and Zoom are not talking. I apologize.
I did see that. No problem.
I love when technology works, right?
Yeah. How's the sound?
It sounds great. So you're in Canada?
Mm-hmm. We have Canadian Thanksgiving this weekend. I just picked up my turkey.
Oh, perfect. How do you prepare the turkey?
Well, I'm going to dry brine it tomorrow, and then I'll just roast it. I haven't decided whether I'm going to stuff it. I think I might just put like a couple lemons and onions in the cavity and do the stuffing separately.
Ooh, yum. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Whenever I do turkey, because it's just my husband and myself, I only cook the turkey breast. And I do
smart.
I do a wet brine because I hate wasting all that meat. Sometimes you get a big turkey that's like 15, 16 pounds. There's no way that two people that we're going to get through that much meat. So I just do the turkey breast that's like 5, 6 pounds and it's perfect. But I do a wet brine, and every Thanksgiving, it's like my go-to recipe. It's an Emerald Lagasse recipe. And in the wet brine, there's water, wine, black peppercorns, bay leaves, orange juice. I can't think of the other ingredients off the top of my head. But the main ingredient is when you're cooking it, I make this homemade cranberry glaze.
Mm.
Yeah, so I'll have to send you the recipe if you're ever interested in doing a turkey breast.
Yeah, that sounds good. It's just not realistic to wet brine a whole turkey. I have to like take all the shelves out of my fridge and put it in a bucket or something.
Yeah.
But my dry brine works pretty well, and I have this new convection oven, which is just like it just goes. The turkey is cooked so quickly. I spent a lot of money on this oven, and it's really making me happy.
Nice. It's paying off.
Yeah. Induction stovetop. It's great.
Ooh, fancy.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot. Well, I would love to get to know you further before I start picking your brain about orchestral auditions and commissions and all that jazz. Can you share a little bit of your background to the listeners so that way they can be brought up to speed of who you are and all of your wonderfulness?
Sure. Just a little recap of the bio.
Sure. Just anything that you want to share with people.
Okay. Well, I grew up in Toronto. I was a Suzuki kid, so I started Suzuki flute at age 6. And I recently reconnected with my Suzuki roots at this past NFA. I spent a lot of time with the Suzuki people. I did a concert for the Suzuki Association, and they're just such great people. If anyone has a chance to take a Suzuki training or just hang out with Suzuki teachers, I think they're a really cool bunch. Anyhow, and then I went to Manhattan School of Music for my undergrad. And while I was there, I actually won my first job in the Memphis Symphony. So I spent my last year at MSM basically commuting about once a month to Memphis, which was quite the commute.
Yeah.
And when I graduated, I moved down there for a year, but I only lived there for a year. After that year, I went back to my part-time position in Memphis, and I kind of moved back to Toronto, and I spent some time at the Glenn Gould School. But that only lasted about a year. I kept my early 20s. I moved around a lot. I had another job in Michigan, and I had a summer job in Missouri, and I was playing quite a bit in Buffalo. And so I kind of think of those years as the years that I lived in my car. My early 20s were pretty transient. Well, at that time, my only ambition in life was to get back to Canada and win a full-time job. I think kind of one or the other. And this job came open in the Vancouver Symphony, which was assistant principal flute and piccolo, which really spoke to me. I love the piccolo. I love the flute. I have a hard time choosing. And it was a full-time job in Canada. So I felt really privileged to win that job. I had a really wonderful time in Vancouver. And then after 5 years, I won the piccolo position in the Montreal Symphony. So I switched coasts, moved back east, and they hired me on right away at McGill because there were people retiring and they were kind of shorthanded. So everything really this was just a couple years ago that I won the Montreal job, and everything has just fallen into place here in Montreal. It's been a really fantastic couple of years. I try not to say that I feel lucky because it's not exactly luck, but I feel very grateful. I feel privileged. In French, the word is chanceux, chanceful. We don't really have a direct translation, but I think that is more, I have had good fortune.
Kind of like bon chance.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Très bien. So I loved how you said my number one ambition in life was to get back to Canada. So you missed home.
Yeah, I did. I had a wonderful time in the States. I'm so glad that I left. I think that it really expanded my horizons. I honestly can't imagine where I would be. My other choice was McGill, actually. I almost went to the school that I'm now teaching at. But MSM offered me a scholarship that was too good to pass up. And I sometimes think about what would have happened if I had gone to McGill and studied with the people who are now my colleagues. I honestly have no idea whether I would have had the same kind of career trajectory. I think that going away for school is so important, especially for Canadians, to see what else is out there. There's only 37 million of us up here spread over this huge country. There's only, 5, 6 full-time orchestras. So there just isn't a whole lot of work to go around. So yeah, moving to the States, I think, was one of the best career choices I ever made. But And I had a wonderful time there, but it is kind of annoying to pay taxes in 2 countries I was on 1-year visas that I had to keep applying for every year. And just the paperwork alone and the stress of, crossing the border every fall and not knowing whether they would let you in. Canada and the States have this reciprocal border agreement where you don't actually need a visa to work either way. You get your itinerary approved. And then when you get to the border, it's up to the guy at the border and how he's feeling that day, whether he wants to, stamp your passport and let you in.
I see.
So that was always big stress.
Yeah, I can't imagine. And all that paperwork. That takes a lot of time.
So much paperwork.
Yeah.
I did get really good at my taxes, though. I had these incredible spreadsheets with, my American freelance income and my American W-4 income and my Canadian freelance income and my Canadian employment income and, how many miles I had driven for what kind of gig, and you're prorating your car expenses in those 4 categories. It was really, and I always used to say that to take this spreadsheet to an accountant and try to explain to them what my system was and what was going on would take just as long as just doing it myself.
I see.
And now, of course, I have extremely simple taxes, but I've given up and I've sent them to an accountant.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I do the same. Well, you're speaking my love language with like columns and organization. That is like my cup of tea right there.
Yeah, I'll send you my spreadsheet if you want.
I love that. So going back, because this is a topic actually that we have not talked a lot about through Flute 360, and that's the Suzuki method. So are you going back? You said, I'm going back to my Suzuki roots. Are you teaching a lot of young ones in Canada?
No, to tell you the truth, I haven't taught a beginner in years and years. I have never gotten the Suzuki training. I should not,
Okay.
Try to pass myself off as a Suzuki teacher. I did use the methods. I think that Suzuki Book 1 in particular and Book 2 are just really great curated method books for teaching a beginner. But no, I just mean that I connected with a bunch of Suzuki people. It was really, the Suzuki Association has some dear friends of mine in it. And they asked me if I would come down and appear as a featured alumnus on this past convention. And I just had a really great, I think on some other instruments like violin and piano, there are these really sort of powerful, historic, pedagogic traditions. And we don't really have that on the flute. I think a lot of us are kind of, teaching the way that we were taught and making it up as we go along a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I think that if you've taken a Suzuki teacher training course, you've automatically just thought about how to teach 90%, more than 90% of the rest of us. I think it just, there's a chicken and an egg thing here. I don't know whether it's that interesting people are taking Suzuki training or that Suzuki training produces interesting people, but I just found it really inspiring and refreshing to hang out with people who had like a cogent view of how to teach music to children and how it benefits the children and how, just having a pedagogic philosophy that they could, put into words better than I can because I haven't done the training. I can't say enough good things about them. I think they're phenomenal people and it's a great method.
That's amazing. Yeah. I really got into the Kathy Blocky method. And I know that there are some connections and parallels between Suzuki and Blocky. And I agree because after I graduated with my master's degree and I was awarded a studio in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I went to teaching 40, 50, 60 students right off the bat, a good 25% of them were little ones. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'd been playing flute for so long and I had 2 degrees in flute, but to actually be given a little one and to be patient and say, okay, how do we form an embouchure? And just even the fundamentals and putting it into words and putting it into practice is a completely different thing. So giving that training to a music ed major, a performance major, music therapy, if you see yourself teaching little ones, I highly recommend looking at Suzuki or Blocky or something to give you that foundation. So that way you can thrive as a teacher, and then that way your little ones can thrive as well. Yeah,
completely. And I really try to prioritize peer feedback when I'm teaching at the college level, I think that there isn't enough emphasis on pedagogy in most conservatory curriculums. And so just to get the kids thinking about, listening critically, what is your feedback for the student that just performed? What did you like? What didn't you like? Because almost none of us have the freedom to not teach at some point. Most of us end up teaching whether we like it or not. And why not, teach people how to do it, how to think about it. I have gotten some of my best insights about playing the flute and playing the piccolo from learning to teach them.
I was going to say the same thing. I became a better flutist after teaching little ones and really thinking about like the head joint, the angle, the air, the tongue. I mean, things that we just kind of take for granted because we've always been doing it, but to kind of take 10 steps back and go, let me think about balancing the flute and technique and hand position and body awareness. It's really good.
Yeah. And I got to say, I've been teaching a lot more piccolo since I moved to Montreal, especially this year. I've got a group class on piccolo repertoire and technique. And, a lot of the other teachers will send their flute students to me for piccolo lessons. And so I'm now kind of having to develop this curriculum of how I think about the piccolo and how to teach the piccolo. And it's taught me a lot about the flute. I think that there are a lot of differences, but I think that the fact that I've become incidentally a piccolo player over the years has changed my flute playing in subtle ways. And so now I'm kind of looking at, how that's going to affect my flute pedagogy too.
Yeah, I swear I'm a better flutist because I play the piccolo. What are the noticeable crossovers from piccolo to flute? Because you said that piccolo has improved your flute playing. Is there like a noticeable characteristic that stands out to you?
Well, I think I only noticed it after the fact, but on the piccolo, I've always thought about these sneering muscles, the muscles
Rabbit
in the
muscles.
top of the lip. Yeah, exactly. And how to keep your embouchure stable by kind of drawing up that way as you're drawing in from the sides. I've always thought about that on the piccolo. That came from my very first piccolo teacher who was in the Toronto Symphony, Camille Watts. But it only recently occurred to me that the same thing is useful on the flute for controlling the high register and controlling quiet dynamics. And the other thing is recently I've been thinking a lot about tongue placement. And I think on the piccolo especially, I have a feeling that a lot of people play the flute as if there's a tennis ball in their mouths, just a ton of empty space. And for a lot of things on the flute, I think that's useful to create a lot of resonance inside the body, to make a really warm sound. On the piccolo, I think a lot of it is taking this wooden tube, which doesn't have a lot of, on its own, the piccolo can be quite woody and hollow. And I think we're having to create focus inside the mouth by bringing up the tongue and allowing the tongue to shape the airstream so that it's fast enough when it comes out of the mouth. I'm still working on these theories.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you in 10 years when I've written my book on the subject.
Perfect.
But I think that when people play the piccolo and they're used to playing the flute with all the space inside the mouth, you can just hear, to my ear, it sounds like the air is bouncing around inside the mouth. And by the time it gets out of the embouchure, it's lost its speed. And the sound is sort of too diffuse and
spread.
And so on the piccolo, I work a lot with making an E or an E and raising the tongue at the back of the mouth so that the airstream is nice and compact
Focused.
before it gets to the front of the mouth. And now I'm starting to wonder how this impacts my flute playing. Have I been doing this on the flute subconsciously all along? Where are the times that you want a nice, open, resonant back of the mouth, and where are the times that you want to help direct the air? Other instruments do this all the time, and of course singers. My dad's a clarinetist, and he's always talking about voicing and how to use the back of the tongue to voice the different registers. I think we just assume that on the flute it's all open all the time, but I think that's maybe not as true as I used to think.
No, I love that. I can't wait for my copy of your book.
Yeah.
My address is.
I'll keep you on the list.
Yeah, perfect. Are you looking for the perfect flute or piccolo to take your music to the next level? Look no further than the Carolyn Nussbaum Music Company in Plano, Texas. Since 1996, we've been the go-to source for flutists of all levels with an unrivaled selection of flutes, piccolos, low flutes, and head joints from dozens of top makers. But we're more than just a music store. We are your complete resource for everything flute related, with sheet music, instrumental accessories, teaching resources, and health information all under one roof. And our in-house staff of experts is always ready to help you find exactly what you need to achieve your musical goals. At the Carolyn Nussbaum Music Company, we're committed to excellence in all aspects of our business, from our top quality products to our friendly personalized service. And with an in-house repair staff certified in all major brands, you can trust us to keep your instruments in top condition for years to come. Follow us on social media to stay up to date on the latest news and events, and visit our website at fluteforyou.com to shop our extensive selection of flutes, piccolos, and more. Whether you're a beginner or a seasoned pro, the Carolyn Nussbaum Music Company is your one-stop flute shop. So then going back to like your 20s, when you were doing these orchestral auditions and traveling a lot, besides just the biggest lesson of, you said this earlier, I'm so glad that you moved, or you said, I'm so glad that I moved outside of Canada to get those experiences, right? So what other lessons did you learn going through those different orchestral auditions? And the reason I ask that is because a lot of 360ers, some of them are on that traditional path of saying, I want to be in an orchestral ensemble. That is my number one goal in my career. And they get so close, like they'll go through, stage 1, stage 2, and then they go to the finals, and then they get, the bad news. And they do it again and again. And they're so tenacious and so driven. But then it just feels like, and I see it on Instagram and Facebook and in my DMs, like, what the heck? How do I keep persevering? Do you have any words of advice for that person out there?
Well, more than anything, I just have so much sympathy for that person. I was that person for so long. Memphis was my 8th audition. So that's honestly pretty early to have a win. And I was still in school. So I think honestly, that was partly luck, because I remember the Memphis audition was the same weekend as, I want to say, Principal in Knoxville, which was in the same state and like days apart, and Second Flute in Boise. And I know there were people that I remember there was someone who brought their suitcase to the Memphis audition because they were flying to Boise right afterwards. But I honestly think that it was just fewer people than it would have been otherwise, because people had to choose audition city. So anyway, Memphis was number 8, but then there was a long, long time before winning my full-time job in Vancouver. There were a lot of auditions in there where, I felt like I already had a job, so why was I not doing better? And then there was a period where I was making the finals a lot and not getting, or I was runner-up, or I got a trial and then didn't get the trial, or I was in the finals and then they hired nobody. There was a lot of, you're almost good enough, but not quite kind of. I don't think anyone actually said that to me, but that's the message that you kind of pick up. It's hard to say what kind of pushed it over the edge. I think on the piccolo especially, when you're sitting on a panel, you can really tell whether the person feels comfortable on the piccolo, whether they know how to play the instrument. And one of the comments I got after I won the Vancouver audition was, we could tell that you already had a piccolo job.
Okay.
So that's a little bit hard to teach. It's hard to tell my students, well, really, the best way to get the job is to already have a job. But I think knowing how the piece goes, making sure that you are really telegraphing the accompaniment along with what you're doing, obviously playing in the right tempo and the right style. I remember one audition where I'm sure that I was eliminated because I played an excerpt in the wrong tempo. I'm sure that was the reason from the feedback that I got.
Mm-hmm.
And the other big thing that changed for me was a conversation that I had with Sarah Jeffrey, who plays principal oboe in Toronto. I was getting really discouraged in my audition process. I felt like I was always getting to the final and never getting the job. And I kept getting feedback that was like, you're a great first round player, but you need to take more risks in the final. We need to hear more colors. We need to hear more personality. And I felt I was internalizing it, and I turned it into, you are robotic. You are an emotionless person. And this actually went back further into my past. There were adjudicators I had as a kid that told me I didn't move enough and I didn't play with enough expression, musicality. But I think telling people that they are or aren't musical as a child is so damaging. I picked up that I was a technical flutist and not a musical flutist really early on. And so still in my mid-20s, this was chasing me, and I was hearing these audition comments and thinking, oh, I'm not musical. And I remember going to a Toronto Symphony audition, my hometown band. I made the finals. I was so, overwrought. I was overcome with emotion to be there. And I was like, this is my chance. I got to show them what I got. I got to prove that I'm a musical person, that I have feelings. And I remember playing this final round. I remember playing Daphnis like on the verge of tears, because it was like, this is all of the emotion I've got. If you don't want this, there's nothing more I can give. And of course they didn't hire me because that doesn't work. You can't just feel harder and expect it to in fact, being emotionally overwrought is probably not going to produce your cleanest performance. Yeah. And so I finally had this conversation with Sarah Jeffrey. She was listening to me play excerpts for another audition, and I was, pouring out my soul on this topic. And she said, well, it's not personal. And I said, well, what do you mean it's not personal? They're telling me that I have no feelings. And she said, no, they're telling you that what you're doing is not coming across. Like there's something technical that you're not doing with your hands and your face that, they would like to hear. It's about getting your ideas across. I'm paraphrasing. I wish I could remember exactly what she said, because it changed my life. But anyway, that really just opened my eyes, let me stop beating myself up and start thinking about how do I make my audience feel the things that I want them to feel, instead of worrying about whether or not I am feeling them. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
It's like, I've heard actually contradictory things on this topic from actors, but most actors that I've heard talk about it say that you can't actually be feeling the feelings yourself. You have to be technically, evoking them in the audience by doing something with your body, by making the facial expressions and the tone of voice. And I think it's the same with us. I think we have to break down what are the elements of expression. How do I make a convincing phrase? How do I, manipulate my sound in a way that's interesting or surprising? But you have to plan these. I mean, maybe I don't speak for everybody. Maybe there are people that are just spontaneously doing expressive and surprising and magical things. But I need to plan them out. I need to say, this is the magic moment in this excerpt. I'm going to do this with my sound, and I can work on that in my warm-ups and in my daily practice. How far can I take this color change? How far can I take this dynamic change? This is, it's a muscle that you can develop, expression. I think I'm actually, Haynes University is offering a course, or a session that I'm calling Expression as Technique, where I do this. I break down the elements of expression and talk about how to work on them so that you can incorporate them into your performance. Anyway, I don't know whether any of that was answered your question. But that was really,
did.
that was a big breakthrough for me in my audition preparation, really. And, audition excerpts are so short and they're so different. And you have to look at them and say, number one, why did the composer write this way? What is it about the harmony? What is it about, if you're suddenly playing in a different key, or you're suddenly changing octaves, or you're suddenly, changing harmonies? What is it that the composer is trying to evoke? That's number one. Number two is, why has this become a standard excerpt? What is it that it shows about the flute? And number three is, why does the committee want this? Why is it here on this list? Why do they want it, before this excerpt and after this excerpt? There's a lot of analysis that I think sometimes gets missed. What can I show about myself in this 25-second piece? How do I wow them?
I love that. And number three that you just listed is something that I've been thinking a lot about as a teacher and conveying that to my students who are going through orchestral auditions. So the last one that I was helping a few students go through was Orchestra Next. And I said, look at what they're saying, what the committee is saying on the page, black and white, but read between the lines too. Look at these excerpts. These are all ballet excerpts. So they want to see that you understand the story, the plot. With Tchaikovsky, with the Nutcracker, are you conveying that you understand that you are that little mouse squeak? Do you know what's going on with the snowflakes? And so number three, it's really funny that you brought that up. Number three is something I've been thinking about lately. It's like, what is the committee asking? Look at how, maybe they're picking Daphnis or something else that really they're asking for you to portray all those different beautiful tonal colors and the lyricism and things like that. And so I feel validated. So thank you for bringing up point number three.
Yeah. And, now at this point in my career, I have been on a lot of audition panels. And to be on the other side of that, you really internalize, okay, we're building a list. We're in the semifinals. We've heard some of the standards, and now we want to hear X. We didn't hear a lot of technique in the first round, so now we want to hear classical symphony. Or, the last round was very technical, and so now we want to hear some Bach, I think you can, if you're thinking about it that way, you can pick up a lot from looking at the list and seeing what they're, we've had over the years several Montreal Symphony auditions, and you can kind of even tell who's on the panel based on what's being asked. Timothy Hutchins, who is our legendary principal flute, only wants you to hear you play lyrically. He wants Bach. He wants, the slow, beautiful, sensuous, one year there was an associate principal flute audition. This was years ago before I was in the orchestra. And he had just been on the panel at the Kobe competition, and they had played this piece called The Ecstatic Shepherd by Cyril Scott. And it's this very funny, it's kind of in the vein of Danse de la Chèvre, like something kind of low and melodious and where there's a lot of room for interpretation. And he just fell in love with this piece, and he put it on the list for the Montreal Symphony audition. So if he's on the panel, you're going to be playing Gluck, you're going to be playing, Bach, you're going to be playing something slow and lyrical. If he's not there, you're much more likely to be asked for the whole last movement of classical symphony, because there are people that want to make sure that you really have the technical chops. But Tim doesn't care so much about that, so it kind of depends on the personalities in the room.
Interesting. I love that. No, thank you for.
It's fun getting a peek behind the curtain.
Yeah.
once you've been in the business a few years, you start learning some secrets.
Tricks of the trade.
Yeah.
Cool. No, thank you for that journey. I just wanted to give that 360 or that encouragement, that uplift that they need, between auditions and stuff like that, because I know it can feel lonely at times and discouraging.
Oh, yeah.
And if we can give them a burst of woohoo, and you got this, then
totally.
Yeah.
You do got this. It's going to be great.
Yeah. Yeah. So as we're wrapping up, because I do want to respect your time, I do know that you are also a Haynes artist. So can you talk about when you joined the Haynes family and the things that you do with the Haynes company? I would love to know about your story there.
Yeah, sure. Well, my first flute teacher, my Suzuki flute teacher from when I was 6, has played a Haynes for decades. I believe her Haynes was made in 1960. It's this beautiful vintage silver, heavy flute. And I have always loved her sound. I used to listen to her albums with her chamber group, and I just thought it was the most beautiful sound. And she, was a passionate advocate for Haynes. And so she had he's like one of our Canadian repair gurus, who is also kind of, he'll like keep his eye out for interesting flutes, and you'll let him know if you're looking for something, and he'll hook you up, kind of thing. She had him keeping an eye out for a Haynes of a certain vintage, and one came around when I think I was maybe 12 or 13. I got my first silver Haynes from the 90s, and I played it forever. I couldn't stop. When I got to university, my teacher thought it was too kind of limited, a little bit too silvery, didn't have enough range. Anyway, I would go to this tiny room and I would try head joints, and I would bring them back, and I would, decide I didn't like any of them. And there was one point when I went to Haynes' showroom and I tried out one of their fusion flutes years ago, and I took it home and played it in a big room and decided that it wasn't for me. I just could not shake this silver flute. It had become kind of so much a part of me. But I really needed more range. So finally I went to 10 karat Haynes, and it was gold, and I didn't want gold, and it was too much money, but I just fell in love with it. I think it has more than some of the heavier flutes I've tried. I think that 10 karat has this really beautiful shimmer that kind of mirrored what I had always loved about my silver flute, but gave it a little more depth. And I played it ever since. That was 2014 or 15. So I've had it about 8 years. And I just joined the Haynes family, I guess it was earlier this year.
Okay.
Yeah, after I remember being on tour with the orchestra in Europe, I think, last October, and we came back, and I was like, you know what? I think that I'm ready. I think at this point in my career, I think they would be, willing to listen to what I had to say. And I was speaking about it with Linda Chessis, who was my undergrad teacher, and she said, "Oh, sure, I'll send them an email." And it turned out that they already knew who I was, and they Avon, who's the general manager and makes a lot of the head joints, has this photographic memory for flutes, and I took her my head joint recently, and she like kind of remembered. Anyway, she says they had known all along who I was, and maybe I would have heard from them even if I hadn't kind of manifested it.
Yeah.
But I'm really, really happy that I connected with them. They've been so helpful. They're not that far away. Boston to Montreal is about a 5-hour drive. It's been really wonderful to get to know all of them. And I think Haynes University is a really phenomenal program that they're offering. I'm excited I've given this class before, but now that it's on the Haynes Ross, this expressionist technique class, I'm gonna make up a slide deck and make it a little more streamlined. And I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to incorporate interactivity or just make it like a straight lecture. But anyway, coming soon to a school near you.
That's amazing. Do you have an upcoming date of when you are presenting through the Haynes University? Like, is it November,
I don't think
December?
It's just been announced. The new slate of classes were just announced a couple of weeks ago, and I haven't heard of any bookings yet. So I think they're available. They're free to the institution because they're sponsored by Haynes. So if anybody out there is looking for a clinic at their institution about expressionist technique, they should contact Haynes.
Oh, cool. Very neat. Nice. The last segment of the show, I ask my guests their pick for the day. So this can be music related or non-music related, favorite book. I always giggle when I say favorite cereal. I don't know where I come up with that stuff, but when my brain goes there, I think Lucky Charms or, Frosted Flakes.
Cocoa Puffs.
Cocoa Puffs. Nice.
I remember getting the little plastic containers with the peel off lid.
Ooh.
that cereal come, and I would get them in the cafeteria at school, and I would fill it up with chocolate milk and then take it up to my shift in the recital hall. But that's not my real answer. My real answer is my favorite author right now is Shirley Jackson. I think she's had kind of a moment because she wrote The Haunting at Hill House, which was made into a horror series by Mike Flanagan. But if you read the book, it's so different from the series. It's so wonderful. The series is great too, and then you can get more into, she wrote this famous short story called The Lottery, which is very creepy and disturbing in a wonderful way. And I've started to get into some of her other novels too. And I just love her. I think she's got such an interesting voice.
Oh, neat. I'll have to put some of her book links in the show notes below.
Yeah, the one that I most recently read is, it's called We Have Always Lived in the Castle.
Okay.
I just read it this summer and I loved it.
Ooh. I've never heard anyone describe literature as being disturbing in the most lovely way.
Yeah, it's a little bit Henry James, kind of like literary ghost story, but more modern. And she's American. She lived in New England. It's wonderful. Check it out.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Cool. Well, my pick for today is garlic. And I'm only thinking of that because we're going into changing of seasons. It's getting colder. This is usually when people get sick. I promise you, I will put $1 million down on the table, and I will promise you this. If you feel like you're getting a little inkling of a cold or a flu or something, the minute you feel that in your throat or your sinuses, take raw garlic, chew it, and actually swallow the juices, let it coat your throat, swallow the clove, and I promise you it will kick the cold and you won't even be sick the next day.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have some Allison pills, I think, in my cabinet, which is where they distill whatever the active ingredient is in garlic. Mm-hmm. I should pull them out. I haven't tried them in a while.
Yeah. No, it's great. Because who wants to be sick with a cold for 5 to 7 days?
Nobody.
Well, it's been lovely getting to know you, and I hope that our paths cross at the next NFA or the next flute event.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Have a fantastic day. Thank you, Chris.
You too.
Bye. Are you craving a space where you can start to defeat imposter syndrome and performance anxiety once and for all? If so, then I personally invite you to join us through an upcoming 5-day challenge that will not only boost your confidence on and off the stage, but you will be surrounded by supportive flutists as well. You don't have to endure this agonizing fear of playing in front of people anymore. You can truly let your artistic voice shine through your performances, and I can show you how to do that through my method called the 360 Empowerment, Unleashing Your Flute Story. Mark your calendars from November 13th through 17th, 2023, for an inspiring session you don't want to miss. Go to my website at HeidiKBigay.com and sign up for the newsletter so you don't miss out on this fantastic opportunity. See you soon. Let's talk about flute.